So this is just after 2 minutes after the scheduled time for this broadcast, which is 1200 hours GMT on Monday, 27th of February 2023. We are broadcasting only on the internet, not on terrestrial, not on satellite, and not on cable platform. We are broadcasting under the banner of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions. KhoodeelaarTV television channel. I am Muhammad Haque, the Vedh Shah professor, professing, advocating, and abiding by and following the principles of the late Vedh Shah. And the Vedh Shah professor is inculcated through every aspect of the broadcast and our campaign in association with the Baby Angel Geronimo editions. Ethical, absolutely ethical, moral, and universal. And the Baby Angel Geronimo is the world's bestest witness. Together, Baby Angel Geronimo and this campaign, carrying out the principles practiced by the Vedh Shah, who shunned material offers. If he had accepted those offers, even partly, then he would have amassed more currency than the combined wealth of today's Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, or the others, whoever the others may be, because they are not as much in the news as those three. The Vedh Shah was a moral champion, ethical champion, moral advocate, ethical advocate. And he was a traveler, he was a philanthropist, he was an educationist, educator, and above all, he was a healer. He was a healer, spiritual prayers maker. And he healed uncounted numbers of people who were suffering from serious illnesses, diseases. And once they recovered, when they healed, either they or their relations, their loved ones, were so overwhelmed with gratitude that they offered anything that the Vedh Shah would want in return, and the Vedh Shah said no. Vedh Shah said no, and he said no, and he never changed the position. I'm basing all of that on the narration, recollections, and the teachings on Vedh Shah by the late Tayyib-un-Nasa, Musammad Tayyib-un-Nasa Khatun, my paternal grandmother, who inculcated in me the lessons of Vedh Shah. Vedh Shah lived on the eastern bank of the river Kuyara, spelled as Kushiara, which runs through India's Assam province and into Bangladesh. And it goes past our home, our ancestral home. So the Vedh Shah essays will be continued, updated, elaborated on. And this is a unique, world exclusive, unique platform. The Vedh Shah professor So today's newspapers in London, in the United Kingdom, we have a glimpse of the papers, but the main item that I want to focus on at this stage is, of course, the front page, top of the front page item in the Times, although it's owned and controlled by Rupert Murdoch, but it is the only paper that has got this prominence to the topic that it runs as the top one. Not the most prominent one, but this is the top one, runs across the all the columns on the Times today, the print edition of the Times. Version of it has appeared online in the Times website. And what it is saying is repeating and reporting the stated opinion expressed by what it calls terror watchdog. This is Begum should be allowed to come home, says terror watchdog. This is the Times of Monday, the 27th of February 2023. And it's the edition number of the Times is 74,030. That's the edition number of the Times. The main photograph in the middle of the page, page 1, is a photograph that shows, I think, rescue personnel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rescue personnel. One of them bending forward onto the what appears to be the covered corpse of one of the migrants that was drowned off the coast of Italy. Now we shall be talking about that as well, and we shall be talking, of course, more about the terror chief, and we shall be reading some of the report, not all of the contents of the text or the copy, as they say in the industry, so called. Copy is the text of a report, a journal. Copy. It's not a duplication, it's a copy, is the original version, the Times copy, as opposed to, or as different from the Guardian copy. We shall check the Guardian later. The Guardian, in the last 48 hours, has published about 5 letters, all about Shamima Begum. And the last one is from a person in Ireland who actually refers to Petty Hearst. Petty Hearst, who was allegedly kidnapped in 1974 or 75 by the American so-called terrorist group called SLA, the Symbionese Liberation Army. And Petty Hearst was the granddaughter of Randolph Hearst. Randolph Hearst was one of the American news publishers magnate. And this writer from Ireland in The Guardian says that she was reminded of Petty Hearst, and she compared the UK government's hostility and obstruction and denial shown against Shamima Begum with the serial I'm paraphrasing because I'm not looking at the actual text of that letter from this person, this woman, from an address in Ireland. A serial kind of accommodations made by the American state, American prosecutors, to allow petty Hearst maximum leeway. Now, this person from Ireland says that she wishes Shamima Begum had been the granddaughter of a newspaper magnate and white and an American. If she were all those things, she would not be denied her natural birth born citizenship of the UK, and she would not be denied return home. So that seems to be the theme that is running now, especially after the 22nd of February publication of the so-called Immigration Commission's findings or ruling. There has been gradual acceptance of the thesis that as someone who was born British and as someone who had no other nationality available to her, Shamima Begum should not have been made stateless, which is what she has been made by stupid Javids. Removal of Shamima Begum's British by birth citizenship. And so this is the line that is developing. And by making reference to these various opinions and comments, I am trying to get zero in, if you like, on our original, still original world exclusive and the longest running campaign about holding the local Tower Hamlets Council, that is local to Shamima Begum, to Amira Abbasi, to Khadija Sultana, and Sharmina Begum, to account for the council's brazen, persistent, poisonous denial of the existence of these girls, let alone discharging what is in the UK law the duty imposed on the local council, all the local councils, to safeguard children in their areas. We have discussed this before at length and we shall discuss it in future. Suffice to say, in this today's context, that all the comments that I'm referring to, specifically by name or collectively, that are not hostile to the idea of Shamima Begum being allowed to return to the UK. Now, the second thing, as the Sunday Times piece by Camilla Long has said yesterday, and Camilla Long has used the word monsters, not one monster, but any number allegedly doing what Shamima Begum has been alleged to have done, should be brought home and tried for their crimes or whatever. Now, the inside, underneath the headline, the Camilla Long piece actually raises the question as to who wrote the headline. Because the caption to the picture of Shamima Begum, underneath Camilla Long's picture, refers to a civilized country. But the headline doesn't say civilized. It is a strange departure because the phrase proper country is very new. I never came across this before. Proper country. The correct phrase should have been and would be and should be civilized country, within quotation or without quotation. So somebody at the Sunday Times took it upon themselves to change the tenor of the stress, the actual line, the narrative that Camilla Long must have written, which suggests that to her, Camilla Long, that is, the UK has pretensions that it is a civilized country with civilized values and norms and the availability of due process and so on. But somebody at the editorial decided that to say that would express an admission that the UK was not a civilized country. So they were doing the little patriotic task there by saying proper country. Every fucking country is a proper country, fucking cunts. So who it was that decided to call it proper country instead of civilized country is one of the racists and liars and little Englanders that is part of the obstacles and obstructions that anyone seeking due process examination of their evidence, in this context Shamima Begum, should be expected to be aware of, wary of, and to take into account. Nothing is to be taken for granted. That only because there is a change, slowly, but change in the direction of could build up a public opinion sympathetic to the idea that whatever has been alleged against Shamima Begum can and should be examined, tried according to the requirements of due process, rule of law, international treaties, etc., etc. Now, the factor of the international treaties is alien to these still racist and patriotic little Englanders, except some writers like the Irish woman and their Guardian and the LSE's law professor Conor O'Gherty, whose views have been condemned by Jonathan Sumption, one of the retired Supreme Court judges who has also joined the list of people who have written letters in the Guardian about this issue. Now, we are the only ones, we remain the only ones to refer to the duties to safeguard children duties, neglected, denied, and ignored by the local Tower Hamlets Council, which is corrupt, which is itself a criminal operation, fronted by the publicly condemned fraudster and person who got in as mayor at the expense of the people of Tower Hamlets. In May 2014, Lutfur Rahman. So we shall be talking about all of those things, but especially our focus remains on the safeguarding children duties neglected by the Armed Council. I'm still looking for the pair of glasses that I need. Hopefully, it will slightly help the proximity. And this piece is written by Fiona Hamilton, crime and security editor, whose front page piece ends. It continues on page 2, but the front page piece ends in the Begum is one of an estimated 60 British women and children held by the Kurdish authorities in Syria. So that is the continuation on page 2. Let's continue what Fiona Hamilton is saying. And in a speech tonight, that is Monday, this is not Monday night yet, but this is an advance reference. In a speech tonight to King's College, London, Hall will say that the UK's strategic distance policy, removal of citizenship, limited consular assistance, and funding of Kurdish detaining authorities is at a crossroads. He will say that the risk posed by ISIS has changed and that as repatriation by other European countries have picked up, the UK is under the spotlight. Let's go back to the page 1 part of the copy, and it is the watchdog, isn't it? It's Jonathan Hall, KC, that is King's Counsel, he's a licensed barrister. The reviewer of terrorism legislation will argue that British or formerly British women should be allowed to return from Syria because that is the position taken by key allies, including the United States. He will also highlight concerns about a new generation of extremists being reared under the cups of the Caliphate program in northern Syria. Begum was 15 when she joined not the Islamic State in 2015 with two friends from Bethnal Green in East London. She has been in a camp in northern Syria since the Caliphate fell. Her case has provoked fierce debate, with her lawyers arguing that she was trafficked as a minor. Last week, she lost a legal challenge against the removal of her citizenship in 2019 by Sajid Javid, then the Home Secretary. The Special Immigration Appeals Commission ruled that the government acted lawfully, to protect national security. The decision was welcomed by Suella Braverman, the present Home Secretary. Bethany Haynes, whose father David Haynes, an aid worker, was beheaded by ISIS in 2014, told the BBC the decision was right because Begum posed a direct risk to all who are around her, and the UK justice system could not deal with her. Notice this. And the UK justice system could not deal with her. The judges concluded that although there was credible suspicion that Begum had been trafficked for her sexual exploitation, I'll read that again. The judges concluded that although there was credible suspicion that Begum had been trafficked for sexual exploitation, that did not mean she had an absolute entitlement to citizenship. Her lawyers have indicated that they will appeal against the ruling. And then it goes on to what I read earlier. Begum is one of an estimated 60 British women and children. And we shall return to page 2 and see what bits I have not yet read out. Done by Kurdish authorities in Syria. The UK's strategic distance policy, removal of citizenship, limited consular assistance, and funding of Kurdish detaining authorities is at a crossroads. He will say, that is Jonathan Hall, that the risk posed by ISIS has changed and that as repatriations by other European countries have picked up, the UK is under the spotlight. Hall acknowledges the argument by MI5 about the risk that ISIS Britons pose, but will point out that the Britons in camps in Syria are in limbo and decisions need to be made. The decision point could come sooner than expected through United States and Allied pressure, Turkish military activity, the court rulings, or natural disasters. He will add, quote, compared to man, women are less likely to have traveled for the purpose of fighting, are less likely to have played battlefield roles, may well have had less autonomy in being able to leave, and now make up the majority of those UK linked individuals detained. Women with children may also fear child protection measures being taken against them, mitigating against further terrorist engagement. Remember the child protection, safeguarding children? Hall will say he has no answer to the argument that this may be discriminatory, undermine female agency, or fail to recognize the roles of female terrorists. However, he will say statistics have shown that men were predominantly involved in terrorist plots. He will add, for UK linked children, the less time spent being inculcated as cubs of the caliphate, the better. The Times understands that many officials are uncomfortable with the refusal to repatriate because it puts Britain out of step with its key allies, that is, Fiona Hamilton. concluding that piece that appears on the top of the Times newspaper today, Monday, the 27th of February 2023. Now, let's see if we can somehow manage to put this copy of the Times before the camera. Now, look at that. On the top of that is the piece. That is where the technical problem prevents the presentation of the item before camera. So that's where the piece is. Let's see if we can find. It is quite possible that the Times should have letters following up the two letters that appeared probably on last week. There is a mental slave with an African name, Tomiwa Ouladi. He is a complete mental slave and an absolute mental slave cunt. He is attacking just like Trevor Terrible Phillips does, those who condemn the racist contents. The topic being Roald Dahl. And there are two letters about Bernard Ingham, the racist criminal. There is a piece about Nigeria's corruption in the middle of the Times leading article, the middle one. There are three, and the middle one is Nigeria's next president must bring hope of change to a country mired in corruption. That's a very mild way to put it. Now, there is a birthdays today led by Baroness Julia Neuberger, senior rabbi, West London Synagogue. Being shown as aged 73. Now, Julia Neuberger is related, I think, by marriage to David Neuberger, who was the president of the UK Supreme Court until 2017, I think. And there is a news item on page 31 of the Times headed Poll Corruption, that is, vote corruption in the election, corruption claims put Nigeria on a knife edge. So the Times Times 2 has got another platform for people like Nikola Frustra and other trendy middle class bourgeois careerist opportunists. There's a picture on page 32 of the Taj Mahal. Crown Prince Frederick and Crown Princess Mary of Denmark at the Taj Mahal yesterday during a tour of India. And this Crown Princess Mary reminds of another figure in the news from time to time, media person, very much reminiscent of various women that are. And there is a piece. Now there is an item by Jane Flanagan under the heading from our correspondent. Cement worker who fled Zimbabwe penniless in a shipping container is now one of South Africa's top sommeliers. It's about wine. Shall go back to the domestic news pages. But before we do that, there is this piece by Paul Johnson who says he's the director of the Institute for Fiscal Studies. And he says that public finances may be improving, but personal circumstances are not. Now, that is a paradoxical statement. There are plenty of people, including some very poor ones, who will find the coming year, at least at best, no easier than they found last year. That is again putting it very mildly and in de facto denial of the real extent of poverty, deprivation, and hunger. Now, this is the item about this hill walker who was carrying his dog when he fell to his death. So, where did it happen? So what happened to the dog? If he was holding his dog with one hand, what happened to the dog? I can't see any, at the first glance, let's say, I can't see any sign of the dog, but I'll check again. Now, while I'm looking for relevant items for the update, I shall. Now, here is a piece about child safety. It says it's the legal editor of the Times. The legal age of marriage and civil partnership in England and Wales rises to 18 today under a law to tackle the forced marriages of children. How absolutely timely and topical. The Marriage and Civil Partnership Minimum Age Act 2022 stipulates that children aged 16 and 17 will no longer be allowed to marry or enter a civil partnership even if they have parental consent. Now, this is absolutely central evidence of the corrupt, dishonest statements made by the Times and the rest of the media, no matter what side of the argument they have been, who have said and keep saying that Shamima Begum married. She fucking didn't marry, you fucking cunts. She didn't marry at 15. She didn't marry at 16. She didn't marry at 17. And now this is 18. Now, she was being used for sex. She was being serially raped. And none of the references to this Dutch so called convert the criminal has even mentioned the fact that he was raping her. And this question that Jonathan Hall has referred to in the version of his speech today by Fiona Hamilton, that they may not have been, these girls, these women, may not have been free, independent. Absolutely. Now, here is the piece on page 19 of the Times where it says Elon Musk has welcomed back neo Nazis to Twitter. Patriotic alternative. There's a picture of the Chihuahua. and the woman he lives with, called Jan, there's a picture of him, Pablo. It is taster event for Goodwood. Good Oof to be held on May 20 to 21 at the Canals, Goodwood, West Sussex. He's looking quite a good oof. So this Tomiua Ounladi is an addition to the mental slavery list that features Trevor Terrible Phillips. Okay, we shall talk about this new one because he has pieced it's an imitation thing about Roald Dahl. Now, this is a piece about legal cudgels help the rich dodge scrutiny. This is actually something that is talking about the, well, it's not admitting as such, but it is effectively admitting the fact that the UK judiciary is completely corrupt and a stooge judiciary. He says, imagine you are a dodgy tycoon called Boris rips them off. You crave respectability and a safe home for your enormous fortune. But the banks that once wooed you are asking tiresome questions about how you made your money. The truth is inconvenient. It involves your ties to corrupt regime and to organized crime. Now, before I go into any more of this particular piece, let me say that the same question should be asked of Tony Blair. Where has he got the millions? Who has been paying him the millions after he officially vacated the spot at number 10 Downing Street in 2007? I mean, he has got a son whose wealth is nearly $1 billion. I mean, where is the money coming from? Bilar is a lawyer, licensed law trader, as is his officially known married wife, Sharibut. Both of them, Sharibut and Tony Blair, have long been known as being involved in corruption. So, quite apart from the war crimes or crimes against humanity that Tony Blair committed, he should be prosecuted. He should be prosecuted for mega fraud and corruption. The fact that he is not being prosecuted and will never be prosecuted shows not only the weakness on the part of the prosecuting authorities, but it shows that the British judiciary, which is where the prosecution, if the prosecution were commenced against him, would be processed, that it doesn't exist in reality. As they have shown in their publicly published version of the ruling on Shamima Begum's particular appeal, the Immigration Commission, whatever, have said that they are only ruling on whether the government followed the mean existing law, and they ruled that they followed the existing law, and the existing law is not open to scrutinized. Here is the heading on that piece. Legal cudgels help the rich dodge scrutiny, but it's the actual government, the UK government, is dodging scrutiny every single day. What the commission has said is an admission that there is no scrutiny available. It has said that it has ruled on whether Sajid Javid, the Home Secretary, was within the law to take the action that he did take, which is to remove the British by birth citizenship of Shamima Begum. And they said in their ruling that he was within his right. Now, this is the crux of the corruption in that statement, because that is part of the legislation which gives the right over citizenship actions to the Home Secretary, not to the courts, not to the courts. No tier of the court system can intervene and scrutinize. And that should be the most brazen example of the fact that there is no rule of law, there is no due process in the United Kingdom. And I go back to, in a rushed reference to Imran Khan in Pakistan, that contrary to his completely unfounded and ignorant repeat praise of the British system, which he has praised for allegedly having rule of law. And he has said that the correlation of the existing rule of law in the UK with Boris Johnson leaving office as Prime Minister is clear. That is absolute rubbish. Why does Imran Khan repeat that? Why has he repeated that? And Imran Khan has repeated similar praise about Switzerland having rule of law. Now, Switzerland has been, at least for 100 years, the world's most notorious, officially known and used bank for crooks of the world. And all the money, that series of crooks from Africa and Asia and even Europe, all the crooks that have come with van loads of money looted from their own countries and territories, have done so by looting and robbing the ordinary people in their own countries. I mean, to have that money, to accept that money, and keep it safe for the criminals and fraudsters and thieves is the total, absolute opposite of rule of law. So Imran Khan is not only ignorant about the facts, but Imran Khan shows a remarkably disappointing lack of logic and rationality. I have pointed out other things that Imran Khan has got wrong. But in this context, it is the law and the rule of law thing that he has got wrong. Now, he says that he has been involved in establishing the Haque The Vedh. Now, I'll simply remind him of all the things that are about. The first thing that Imran Khan must do about Haqiqi Azadi is to recognize the contribution made to Pakistan's existence, mainly by the people fighting for independence and creating the whole of Pakistan. But those people came from today's Bangladesh, which was East Pakistan until the 16th of December 1971. And I've said to Imran Khan, as a kind advice, it's not a kind of attack on him, a very kind and generous advice for him is to start the process of saying long overdue apology to the people attacked by the Pakistan Army in 1971 in East Pakistan. And I've said about the damages and the reparations and all the other things, which I don't need to repeat because they're all on the record already. So coming back to Coming back to the Times today, so who is this Valerie Grove? Because Valerie Grove is paying homage to John Betjeman. So we leave the Times for a minute and we take a quick look at the prominence given to the word justice on the front page of the Sun today, which is justice for Joanna, and they said the gloat after we, that is the Sun, back case, justice for Joanna. And it says that the notice the word justice being completely abused. Justice Minister Rab promises to meet Joanna's family, and Joanna's killer's parole bid examined rigorously. Now, elsewhere, that he will resign if the inquiry, so called, rules that he did bully staff in the ministry. And the Sun has got, and we'll go to the migrants being massacred off the coast of Italy soon. But this is the editorial on page 10 of the Sun today, Monday, the 27th of February 2023, which reads, "Stop the boats." Notice the dismissive way the language is used. Another senseless migrant. So the word senseless is used before the word migrant. So it is doubly cruel and doubly depraved and doubly evil. So it says another senseless migrant boat, at least 58 lives lost. And it is totally contradictory. It's a totally cruel and at odds with the claim that they are campaigning for justice for Joanna. They are doing no such thing. They are racists and they are liars, and they would quite openly encourage the murders and massacres of the most vulnerable, the poorest, and the most deprived. Now, as I said, the broadcast that I made on the issue of African, mainly African and Asian, let's say, a bit slightly lesser extent, but essentially African and Asian mainly. Poor people, people who have political instability in their countries of origin and political violence and no rights in the countries of origin. And I said in the broadcast that I wrote and presented in the Channel 4 news slot, that is to say, the Channel 4 news broadcast at 1900 hours local time, followed by a 3-minute long space called slot. That is the slot. So I wrote the slot and I presented the slot. I presented quite a few slots at that time before I became diverted by other occupations, other engagements and campaigns. I did that particular one in January 1992 when the UK government was a conservative government, that one fronted by John Major. And the UK had its in January 1992 to present the presidential address at the United Nations General Assembly. Because for the preceding year, as UNO member state, the UK had been the president of the United Nations General Assembly. And in a lead up to the journey to the UN headquarters, John Major was letting on, doing the briefing and propaganda to add importance to his role in the UNO, that his main concern about the United Nations role was to stop, discourage, and prevent certain countries from acquiring nuclear weapons. Now, I'm the first one to say, and I shall forever say it, that nuclear weapon is the evil that the world must decommission completely. But what John Major was doing by using the reference to the nuclear weapons, he was diverting attention and he was trying to catch attention for the wrong reasons. He is not opposed to nuclear weapons. He never was opposed to nuclear weapons. The only opposition to nuclear weapons John Major had was in relation to Muslim countries, or if the country is called North Korea, not if the country is called another country that is aligned, is in alliance with the West. So the real purpose behind John Major's propaganda was to get a bit of soundbite and that's it. No, nothing would change as a result of his alleged opposition to nuclear weapons. But if John Major was really interested in saving humanity and helping humanity, then he would have listened to me. Well, he would not have to listen to me, he would have thought about it himself. Because he would have known that across Africa and across Asia, literally millions of people were in daily starvation and hunger and famine. And he, John Major, had ignored. I mean, I know that for a fact because when Bangladesh, only the year before, Bangladesh, southern coast of Bangladesh, had been hit by a cyclone on the 30th of April 1991, it was I who took a swiftly organized deputation, mainly led by me, to number 10 Downing Street on the 4th of May 1991 and delivered a demand for the UK government to make substantial contribution to help Bangladesh at the time affected by cyclone, and hundreds of thousands of people died. And that item was featured as the main news item in the main evening news of the BBC of that night, 4th of May 1991. And I was shown as the one that is leading the call for the British government to help Bangladesh. So when I presented the Channel 4 slot asking John Major to help the people affected by hunger and poverty, I wasn't doing it out of emptiness. I had most recently done that with John Major's response because he raised the contribution of the United Kingdom from 50,000, which was the sum until I went to demand significant increase and handed the petition, as they call it, the letter which I wrote while I was standing outside Downing Street, and I wrote that by hand. So he raised it to 50 million pounds. Now, I succeeded in doing that, getting him to raise the 50,000 to 50 million because of political pressure. This was immediate and it was drawing attention. Now, if the campaigners, other campaigners who claim to be supporters of the rights of the migrants, etc., mobilized and united to create the kind of pressure that I created on John Major's administration in May 1991 about Bangladesh, then the issue of the migrants can begin to be made ready to be solved, eased. But there is no sign anywhere that any political post holder is doing anything like what I did about Bangladesh. So today, when the news about the nearly 100 people must have died because they sailed from the Turkish city of Izmir in Bangladesh, in Silot. That word is called Azmir because there is a town in India called Azmir. So they are similarly named. Azmir Sharif. So Izmir in Turkey was the place from where they sailed. Now, according to survivors, that was a boat that had far less capacity than the number of people that wanted to board it. And one of the sources quoted by the Reuters news agency is that that boat was boarded by anything between 150 to 200 people. Many of the children who got massacred were there. Now, I have a very important question here to raise as an update internationally. Why is it that while the UK government, the French government, the German government, none of them has actually paid practical attention to what I said in January 1992 in my worldwide broadcast, because the Channel 4 news is worldwide accessible. And the archives are still there. And it's 31 years ago that I said that. In the 31 years, the United Nations, which has got various agencies funded by the world's public, has known about these people routinely, that is, regularly. Thousands of people have been dying trying to cross the waters or enter the Western countries. Why is it that the United Nations has got no instrument in place to require member countries of the United Nations to stop doing what the United Kingdom government has been doing? What the fascist, now in power in Italy, has been doing, and its predecessors, although not officially identifiable as fascists, had been doing. The French government has been doing, the Germans have been doing. All of them have been making life absolutely difficult for the would be refugees, migrants, asylum seekers. So we were talking about all of that, this in the context of the drowning, the latest drowning, in later editions, because I want to discuss at maximum length all the aspects of the migration as a crisis, because I foresaw the crisis. I warned them that there would be such a crisis, and they have not listened. And these people are dying, people are being massacred, I would say, and the United Nations is doing what the United Nations has done, which is to watch the massacres and then issue stupid, meaningless condolences and regrets and whatever. Now, here is a piece on pages 26 and 27 of today's Sun by a victim of this serial rapist, Dave Carrick. This criminal has got a grinning face in the pictures. And this is the quote from this woman: "Bastard Dave drugged and raped me. When I read the devastation of Sarah Everett's mom, I knew I had to nail him." Now, this woman, Bastard Dave, he should never be allowed out of prison, and he should be subjected to any other kind of punishments that can be available. This is a piece by the Sun's crime editor, Mike Sullivan. The woman who nailed police serial rapist David Carrick today reveals how she was inspired to come forward by the words of Sarah Everett's mother. For 13 months, Sophie suffered in silence after being drugged, beaten, and raped by Met Police firearms. Why do they call him officer, you fucking shits? He's not an officer. He's a criminal murderer. Rapist, Carrick. She isolated herself and carried her burden alone before finally finding the courage to report him after seeing Suzanne Everett's victim impact statement on the sun.co.uk. Mrs. Everett spoke movingly of her torment over Sarah's murder at the sentencing of her murderer, Wayne Couzens, who was also a mad cop. And her powerful testimony helped lead to the unmasking of Carrick, who worked on the same armed protection unit as Cousins. The grieving mother's outrage over how Cousins abused his police authority to kidnap, rape, and murder Sarah resonated with Sophie. She said, I tried to ignore what Carrick had done to me and didn't tell anyone. But I read the impact statement from Sarah's mother and it really got to me. After that, I could not ignore what Carrick did. He was another police officer, and I was worried he would kill someone next time. By coming forward, I was also honoring Mrs. Everett and Sarah's memory. Sophie's evidence opened the floodgates on Carrick as more women reported their own brutal treatment at his hands over a 17-year period. Her bravery was hailed by the judge who jailed 48-year-old Carrick for life this month and told him, it is remarkable that with one woman being driven to report an allegation against you, despite your position and power, others felt able to act. Courage calls to courage everywhere, and its voice cannot be denied. Sophie, not her real name, was put through a sadistic sexual ordeal by Carrick after they met through dating app Hinga or Hinge. Anyway, so this is a quite a lengthy piece in the Sun on pages 26 and 27. And I shall just put before the camera a glimpse of this. Is it coming? It's difficult to see the camera. That's the glimpse of the thing, just about. So we shall be talking about the police, and we shall be talking about the judiciary, and we shall be talking about, ironically, Dominic Raab. Now, Dominic Raab has been accused, not for the first time, not by one source, but Dominic Raab has been accused of being a bully many, many times. Let's check what current edition of the wiki entry on Dominic Raab is saying. Remember, the wiki entries on characters of Dominic Raab's kind of featuring in the media, in the news. The entries keep changing, being changed opportunistically and sometimes dishonestly, racistly, corruptly, irresponsibly. Let's check what today's edition on Dominic Raab, RAAB, is reading about some aspects. Now it says Dominic Rennie Raab, born on the 25th of February. Can you imagine? This is his anniversary 2 days ago. He's a British politician who has served as Deputy Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Secretary of State for Justice. Now, let's see if we find them recognizing any of the Rab is a notorious racist and a person that has been accused of sexual harassment. Now, on 30th of January 2011, the Mail and Sunday published an article alleging falsely, which is very clearly being cautious, that Rab, in his previous role as Chief of Staff to David Davis in 2007, had paid a female employee £20,000 in an out of court settlement as part of a confidentiality agreement to drop a claim of workplace bullying. Now, that was 2011. Rab responded by stating, "This is a smear, and any insinuation that I have behaved improperly is false and malicious." He subsequently sued the newspaper for libel. The Mail on Sunday's publisher, Associate Newspapers, attempt to stop the action was denied by High Court in December 2011. During these proceedings, it was disclosed that the employee had taken a claim against Rab to an employment tribunal where it was settled with a compromise agreement which included monetary compensation and a confidentiality clause for both parties. The newspaper issued an apology on 18th of March 2012 stating, "We accept that our allegations were unfounded and we apologize to Mr. Rab for the damage, embarrassment, and offense caused." Now, that is not the end of it. That was in December 2000, sorry, March 2012. Let's check more because we are going to find. No, we shall ignore the racist and Brexiteering aspects of his behavior. Okay, so there is this one is on 16th of November 2022. Two formal complaints were made about Rab's behavior during his time as Justice Secretary and Foreign Secretary in Boris Johnson's government. Allegations against Rab included that he lost his temper during work and that staff were scared to enter his office. After Rab had been notified about the two formal complaints, Rishi Sunak agreed to Rab's request for an independent inquiry into the complaints. Rab said he would cooperate fully and that he would thoroughly rebut and refute the claims against him. He said he had never tolerated bullying and was confident that he had behaved professionally. Adam Tolley KC was appointed to undertake the investigation. The Prime Minister will remain the arbiter of the court, the Prime Minister's official spokesman stated. The Observer newspaper was told in November 2022 there were concern about the way Rab treated officials while he was Brexit Secretary in 2018. An unnamed senior source said that a prominent official in the Brexit department sent a document stating a formal expression of concern to the Cabinet Office. The Observer understands the document claimed unprofessional, even bullying, conduct of the minister towards his private office. A source who knew the complaint said no action was taken. Sources close to Rab denied the complaint. A formal investigation will include looking at what Rab did in 2018 as Brexit Secretary. Now, on to The Guardian. The Guardian reported in November 2022 that unnamed Ministry of Justice sources said that senior civil servants who directly experienced Rab's alleged aggressive behavior and bullying had made a handful of formal complaints. An unnamed Ministry of Justice insider told The Guardian that the new allegations were more serious and more specific than previous claims over Rab's abrasive management style. Rab was allegedly demeaning and aggressive to staff. Unnamed Whitehall sources
earlier complained Raab had behaved so badly and inappropriately at an earlier high level meeting that Antonia Romeo had to contact senior officials of the Home Secretary to express regret. Simon MacDonald said in November 2022 that staff were scared to go into Raab's office due to his controlling manner. MacDonald, who was with Raab at the Foreign Office, said it was language, it was tone. He would be very curt with people. And he did this in front of a lot of other people. MacDonald said that people felt demeaned, that Raab was not aware of the impact of his behavior and couldn't be made to see that impact. A spokesman for Raab denied the allegations. Helen Grant, who worked with Raab as a minister at the Foreign Office, said Raab had been very decent with high professional standards. In November 2022, it was reported in The Guardian that senior civil servants in the Ministry of Justice were offered respite or route out of the department after Raab was reappointed due to fears that some were traumatized by his behavior when he was there before. Antonia Romeo allegedly spoke to Raab to warn him to treat staff professionally and with respect. Multiple unnamed sources with the Ministry of Justice told the Guardian that Raab created a culture of fear in the department. The unnamed sources said that Raab was demeaning rather than demanding, was very rude and aggressive, and wasn't just unprofessional, he was a bully. Raab's spokesman said he holds himself to the highest standards of professionalism. The Sun suggested Raab had once hurled tomatoes from a salad across a room in a fit of anger. Raab's spokesman said the claim was nonsense. The Times reported a formal complaint that civil servants were signed off work for extended periods of time when Raab was Justice Secretary. Some were left in tears after speaking to Raab or his senior team, according to the Times. The newspaper further suggested that work pressure and unreasonable deadlines impacted some allegations, etc. Now, this is this is the man who is still in post as the Minister for Justice of the same. Now, where is the time for someone like him to even think about the operation of the courts? And we shall be talking about Human Rights Act and how Raab is the biggest bully trying to decommission all traces, all traces of human rights legislation, human rights kind of reforms entering into the British legal system. We shall be talking about that because that itself is worth looking into. In 2009, prior to becoming an MP, Raab said he did not support the Human Rights Act, stating that the very enactment of the Human Rights Act has served as a trigger for the formulation of claims by lawyers and judicial reasoning by courts, using human rights arguments that would never have been dared before. The spread of rights has become contagious, and since the Human Rights Act opened the door to vast new categories of claims which which can be judicially enforced against the government through the courts. Now this is completely criminal. It's untrue, and it absolutely falsely creates the impression that the human rights concept is really recognized by the court system. It is not. On 3rd of November 2016, and in response to the decision of the High Court in R.B. Miller, Secretary of State for exiting the European Union, on whether the government was entitled to notify an intention to leave the European Union under Article 50 of the Treaty of Rome, European Union, without a vote in Parliament, Raab stated that in the 2016 EU membership referendum, the British people gave a clear mandate for the UK government to leave the EU and take back control of our borders, laws, money, and trade. It is disappointing that today the court has chosen to ignore their decision. He went on to state that the decision was a plain attempt to block Brexit by people who are out of touch with the country and refuse to accept the result. However, the vote to leave the EU was clear and they should not seek to obstruct it. So, that is the selection mainly of the references to Rab. Let's check what is going on in today's news about the status of Dominic Raab. Well, this is the one that is running in the printed version of the paper. The Reuters copy 8 hours ago is saying that I will resign if bullying allegations upheld. Let's see what the Reuters copy in full says, or in detail says about Raab. British Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab said on Sunday he would resign if an investigation into his conduct upheld allegations of bullying made against him by government staff. If an allegation of bullying is upheld, I would resign, Raab told Sky News. In November, Raab requested an investigation into two formal complaints about his behavior. A month later, it was widened to include 5 further formal complaints. So it's not running a detailed item. Let's see if the Guardian has got anything new on Raab. So Betty Boothroyd has died aged 93. Let's see if there is anything new in the letters column about Shamima Begum. Well, this is the letter that is an assumption. This woman from Ireland is called Carmel Bedford. Let's go into the reference to Petty Hearst, who was kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army in the early 1970s in the USA. She writes from Clonbar, County Galway, in Ireland. Her name is Carmel Bedford. Bedford is spelled Bedford. One can't help reflecting that Miss Begum would have been wise to have been a white US citizen and the granddaughter of a publishing magnate instead of being born in one of the most deprived areas of the UK, the daughter of working class immigrants from Bangladesh. And we shall be talking about these issues because they are not, there is no new kind of content to the letters column in the online Guardian. Let's check what is happening on the Times website. This is 1346 GMT, and we have been broadcasting on this particular edition for 1 hour and 44 minutes. This is the KHOODEELAAR television channel, broadcasting under the banner of the baby angel Geronimo. Baby angel Geronimo is the world's bestest baby angel Geronimo, and bestest witness, the baby angel Geronimo. And we love the baby angel Geronimo, and we shall continue to love the baby angel Geronimo, and we shall demand all the lessons of the baby angel Geronimo, battle against the criminals in the United Kingdom, learned and implemented. So we shall be bringing an end to this one at 1 hour 48 minutes length, and the time is 13:50 GMT on Monday, the 27th of February 2023.